Thank you. Let's make sure if everyone knows where you're at. You are at the Governmental Affairs Full Committee. Okay, can everybody hear me? Um, I'm going to ask if we have Representative Anderson, if you would open us in prayer. What's your mic number?
Thank you. If everyone will bow with me. Dear kind and heavenly Father, God, we thank you for blessing us with another day, God. We thank you for this body that we're a part of, Lord. We ask for your guidance and your direction, God. We ask for your discernment, Lord, as we go through and look at the matters of this state. In your name, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. We have several bills to take up today, and I've had a request. We have a member that has another bill that, another meeting. If you want to, let's see. Let's see. Representative Gullett, did you have your bill ready?
I do.
Thank you. What's your number?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, I present to you House Bill 465. It's LC 364652. This is a bill that says the alarm system contractor shall not be responsible for false alarm fines unless the alarm system contractor was actually responsible for the false alarm. I think if you look, studies will show you that 80% of the false alarms are generated by 20% of the alarm users. And finding the chronic misusers of alarm systems can dramatically reduce the number of false alarms. And honestly, I think it's the best way to modify user behavior. Unfortunately, some municipalities in recent years have enacted programs that find the alarm company rather than the customer. And the alarm company is then forced to recoup the money from their customer. These policies really don't change user behavior, and it fines the innocent party for the actions of another. The bill has been passed, or the language has been passed in Florida, Tennessee, Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas, and is currently also working its way through the Mississippi legislature. And I'm happy to answer any questions related to the bill.
Do we have any questions from any of the members? Number. Representative Oliver?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Gullett, I heard a possibility of an amendment to this that you've discussed in relation to impact of cities after January 1st.
Yeah, I told them I would work that on the Senate because of timing. I don't really want to go through the language of changing that, but I committed to Representative Roberts that I would work on that in the Senate side.
Okay. The amendment specifically is that this bill, if passed, would apply to cities after January 1st, 2021 or 2022.
Right, the cities that currently have it in place, right?
And so you would rather me not offer that amendment today, but you want to offer it in the Senate.
Yeah, I told her I'd make that suggestion and try to make that change in the Senate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any others or anyone to speak to the bill? We had a pretty good hearing, so I don't know that we're open to a lot of discussion at this meeting. All right, since there are no questions, I will entertain a motion. Do I hear a motion? Do I have a second? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed?
No,
I'm sorry.
I'm online, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. The motion passes and you're on your way to rules.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll stay for a couple more. I got till 1:30. So.
Okay. All right. Let's go to House Bill 148. Representative Schofield. Excuse me, what's your number? Thank you.
5. House Bill 148 was a bill that was carried first by and introduced by Representative Rhonda Burnell, and it was also second co-signer was Representative Valencia Stovall. And really the purpose of this bill, it allows members appointed to the Development Authority to have the right to receive a hearing prior to being removed from the position. In the current law, and we talked about this, it wasn't in the statute, so we're just allowing this bill to have proper notification for those that have been on the Development Authority. Also, this bill also allows a member, at least one member, non-resident member, to be added to the authority, and that is at the discretion of the committee, so it's not mandatory. And the only other thing in the bill that we changed, it was some outdated language where it was referring to director, and we changed that to board member.
Okay. Are there any questions from the committee? Is there anyone from the audience that would like to address or speak to the bill? I don't see any. Do I hear a motion? Do I have a second? All those-
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any-
Aye.
I hear no opposed. Your bill passes. You're on to rules. Okay. Let's move on to House Bill 92. Representative Gamble? Let's see if that's the right,
That's it. Thank you,
Uh,
Madam Chair.
thank you.
So House Bill 92 that you have before you, and we talked about it in subcommittee the other day, would revert the years back to the previous version for obtaining copies of the birth certificate and death certificate. And I did mention in committee the other day that I had spoken to the department, and they had expressed concerns, particularly as it relates to the birth certificate and reverting back to the 100 years versus leaving it at 125, which is where it currently resides. You'll remember this was a part of a title cleanup bill from last year where these times were shortened or lengthened, excuse me. And I heard from a lot of folks that are involved with genealogy that the change had really created a situation that made it very difficult for them to obtain access to these records, prohibiting, reducing their ability to do the great work that they do. I also want to mention that well, let me get to my notes. Ms. Olsen and Ms. Hamilton are here today, and I know we don't do testimony in committee, but they've been here the whole time we discussed this. I believe that right now the posture on this is that the department has requested that we not change the birth certificate date. And so I know that they're here and Mike can speak better to this. And I would like to say, I would like to see the bill move forward, even if we amend it. But I still think that we owe it to ourselves to look at the situation that has presented itself with the department. And I respect them and their work. And I know that they've been extremely busy this year dealing with everything they've had to deal with. But I think that there is something that we need to look at here with access to these records. And so with that, I'd be happy to defer to them if that's your will, Madam Chair.
We're going to, I don't always have any testimony at the full committee, but there were several that came up. And I think the full committee would benefit from hearing some of this information. So if you have someone that likes to speak to the bill, please have them, if you would come up and introduce yourself and who you are.
Okay, my name is Katie Smith, and I'm the Deputy Director of Government Relations for DPH, and I'll be quick. The big thing is the birth certificates. Right now, we would like to keep it at 125, and that's pretty simple just because there are Georgians that are alive that are older than 100. So if this change happens, that means that anyone can get their birth certificate. And at that point, that becomes a privacy concern. This is already a vulnerable population, and we don't want to make them even more vulnerable by making this change. I will say, if the worry is about getting copies of birth certificates, anyone can get a plain paper copy of the birth certificate if the person is deceased. If the registrant is alive and not more than 100 years old, both a certified copy and a plain paper copy of the birth certificate can only be issued to a list of people that are related to them. You can get a death certificate, and we have made a compromise about the death certificate, anyone can get that. That is typically an open record. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Does anyone on the committee have a question? Okay. Representative Williams, you have a question?
Yes, Madam Chair. Well, a comment. I just have heard from many constituents who are very much in favor of this legislation as originally introduced. Several of them have mentioned the birth certificate issue and the cost of paying for birth certificates at $38 a piece. So based on a lot of emails from constituents, I would support the bill without amendments.
Thank you. Mary Margaret, I'm sorry.
When bills are sent to when records are sent to archives, are they digitized before they're sent?
I believe so. And I would like to say about the price, it would be $38 if you use one of our third-party vendors. It is $25 if you're going to a vital records department and you're requesting it by mail or in person. That $38 number, that only happens if you want it within like 48 hours or something like that.
And what is the process to waive the $25 fee?
Could you repeat that? What is the process of?
To waive the $25 fee if there is a process?
So if it's an open record, it's typically 10 cents, if that. It'll be free. If it takes less than 15 minutes for our vital records department to access that record, it's free.
Even for a certified copy?
Not for a certified copy.
And what's the cost of a certified copy?
$25.
Is that all? Are there any other questions? I have a couple, and
Sure.
One of them was the length of time that it's taking. And has there been a problem with people getting false birth certificates? I too have had a lot of folks concerned about this. And I will say I recently got some information from Alabama, and it was $15, and that was it, and got it back within like 3 days. So I'm trying to figure out why we're not able to accommodate. And they didn't cut off. These were folks under 100 years old.
I don't know if I can speak to false birth certificates. I don't know if I have an answer. That might be something I need to look into and get back to you. And as far as the price, that is just what is set. That could be something to look forward to in the future.
Okay, we've set it by the agency, and that's what it is.
Yes.
Do you have a backlog, or do you get a lot of these requests?
I talked with our vital records head at DPH, and he said there really isn't a backlog. Like if they can handle it within that 15 minutes, they handle it and they take care of it that day. I guess it's more for the certified copies or the ones that they have to go that are older that they have to go and hunt down essentially.
Okay, and then my other question is, why is there a problem with the under 100? If we are not having a big issue, I sort of am feeling like there's not a reason to hold out.
Again, the 100 versus the 125, the issue is that if this becomes public, that means that anyone can get a birth certificate if they're alive older than 100 years old. So if you're 101, I could go and request your birth certificate and I can get that. And that's my information now. So at that point, that becomes a privacy concern.
Go right ahead.
If I may ask a question, just to clarify, the information on that birth certificate in most cases, isn't most of that information already out there on the internet already?
I don't know. I don't know if a social security number would be out. So
It's not on the birth certificate. Afterwards, yeah.
I don't know if it's all out on the internet. Again, I'm presenting our side, and you can, if there's a question that I can't answer, I'd be happy to find it out and get back to you today.
All right, thank you. Do you have anything?
Well, and I know we don't have a lot of time. Ms. Olsen wanted to speak briefly.
Please come forward if you'd like to make a statement. Okay, number one, just use that mic right there.
Okay.
My name is Elizabeth Olsen. I am a professional genealogist. I'm also the president of the Georgia chapter of the Association of Professional Genealogists. I hold a professional certificate in genealogy methodology from Boston University as well. Federal law prohibits Social Security numbers from being on these documents. Also, Social Security didn't come into play until 1935, so none of these people that we're talking about would have Social Security numbers on the documents. Further, the federal government finds that 72 years is an adequate number, and so they let the censuses out after 72 years. Anyone who was born before 1920, their information that would be on these documents was released over 30 years ago. The 1950 will be released next year. There has been no evidence of identity theft using these records. In a New York State law case, the judge found in favor of the people that wanted the records open because he said that all of the instances that they gave were hypothetical possibilities. In Georgia, we've not had open birth certificates. We didn't register births or deaths until 1919. So last year would have been the first time that these records would have been opened for anyone to access. So here in Georgia, any evidence towards identity theft would have to be based on hypothetical possibilities because we haven't had any open records prior to now. The closing of these death records, if they close them, then we lose about 50 years of records that we've been using. There's a historical cemetery up in North Fulton County that's using these records. The city of Johns Creek is using these records right now to identify and research the families of people who are buried in that historic cemetery. And I am a contractor for the U.S. military's past conflict repatriation branch. When remains of soldiers are found, it's my task to find their surviving relatives so that these men can be repatriated and these families can get closure. And sometimes these records are the only link that I have to being able to contact or trace down their surviving relatives so that these families can get closure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, is there anyone else to speak to the bill or any questions from the members of the committee? Do I hear a motion? Any further discussion? Sure.
Well, with all respect, I had asked you to change it back to the way it was, and I know the department has asked us to not do that with the birth certificates, and I do respect their work. I mean, my father's a retired state employee, and so I don't generally like to go against these agencies, but I do think we have a unique opportunity to help a lot of people that do incredible work with this information. Ms. Olsen and Ms. Hamilton support the change back to the previous specified years for these records, and the emails you've received from individuals that do genealogy and other types of research have been to support the bill as it currently is written. But I did want to come today and let you know that the department has said this because they've talked to me about it, and I do respect their position on this.
So you and Ms. Olsen are on the same side?
That's correct.
Okay.
Let's go ahead. Will you give us your LC number so we all know we're working off the same one?
All right, we're working off of LC 338488.
And this is the one that's not amended as you
Correct.
proposed.
This
This
is
is the
the-
original, the way you want it.
That's correct.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Oh, yes, sir. What's your mic number? 9. Fine.
Just to make sure I understand, when we talk about the way it was, we're not talking about the way the statute was, we're talking about the way your original bill was.
No, we're talking about the way the statute was prior to the change we made last year, which moved it from 100 to 125 and 75 to 100. And in this bill, we would go back to 175.
All right, and okay, that was
Mhm.
confusing me because the statute's the way it is and your bill proposes to change that, but we're changing, your bill changes it back to the way it was
Cor-
prior to the. current
Correct. And that's correct.
but we're going just with the text of LC 338488.
Correct.
Okay.
Unless the committee's will is to amend it at the department's request, and that would be your prerogative, but
I don't hear a request for an amendment, so we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Your motion passes. You're off to rules.
thank you.
Okay, Representative Wiedauer, are you, yes, please come forward. Right there. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Thank you for hearing this bill. I'm bringing you House Bill 608 LC 364736S. Give you guys a chance to make sure everybody's good. Madam Chair, what this bill simply does is this is a continued bipartisan effort to expand rural broadband across the state of Georgia. Obviously, we've taken a couple cracks at this over the last couple of years and have made a great strides. And this is another piece of that effort. What this does, it expands the opportunity for local governments to not only just to enter into agreements with public, but also private entities to expand broadband. It allows the state the flexibility to work directly with these providers. It also tightens up statutory language to ensure state funds are targeted at areas that have not been funded. What we also don't want to do is punish anybody that's already trying to expand. So this will take effect moving forward. I've thought about it a lot lately. That I used to run a college guys group at church, and getting all those guys together on a Sunday is really challenging. And I've been doing the same thing with this bill. We've had the EMCs, the telecoms, the cable guys, ACCG. We're all trying to work together. And I commend all of those efforts. And we are still working through a few things, but everybody's working in good faith and looking forward to moving this forward. Anybody have any questions? I'll be glad to answer.
Do we have any questions from the members? What's your number? Please go right ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative, what I try to figure out quite often is what is broke and how are we fixing it? This is a current law. Something's wrong and you're trying to make it different. What's wrong and how does this fix it?
We're trying to expand the toolbox. It's not that it's wrong. What's wrong is the fact that we don't have good access across the state of Georgia for broadband. And what we're continuing to try to do is find ways and other efforts to expedite that situation. We've gotten to the point, I think, as we've seen certainly in the pandemic, that these rural areas that aren't served by good, high quality broadband are lagging behind in so many different ways, whether that's a farmer or a student that's not in the classroom. We need broadband, and we need to get it to these people as soon as possible. This is simply expanding the toolbox, putting more tools in the box to get those things, get broadband across the state quicker.
Well, I guess let me ask it this way then. We already have a statute that does that, as attempts to do that, and you want to change that statute, correct?
We would like to add to it. Yes, sir.
Tell me what you're adding to it. Tell me what's going to be different under the current law and how it would be when you change it.
Right
That's
now,
what I'm trying to figure out.
Yes, sir. This is actually allowing them to enter into some of these agreements with current broadband providers, and not just private entities that are funding capital for a public expansion of broadband.
Well, I was reading over ACCG's memo that they gave to us. I get, which I assume you've seen, which is in opposition to your bill, correct?
It is in opposition to the prior substitute, and I believe Kathleen with ACCG is here to talk
She's
to it.
testifying? Okay, that's
Yes.
fine. Well, I'll wait and ask her.
And this current substitute addresses a number of the concerns. Like I said, we're all kind of in this together. We've been trying to find common language that is acceptable for everybody. I think we've addressed some of those. I certainly won't go on I'm not going to say they're 100% supportive of this, but I think we've come a long way. And I think there's a few more things that we're looking to tweak, but I think she'll speak to that.
Okay, I'll wait.
Are there any other questions? Okay, you have someone to speak to the bill? You would come forward? Yes. Again, we had a lot of questions about these bills. Normally, we don't hear this much in full committee, but because of these questions, we are today.
Thank you very much. I'm Kathleen Bowen from ACCG, and funding for broadband, and specifically state funding to the state broadband grant program, is pretty much ACCG's #1 priority this session, voted on by our members. So while this is a state grant program and it is state funding, our members care very deeply about this. And it's not a simple bill. The author has been communicating with us, and every time I see a new version of this bill, it is better. But it's written from a different perspective than local governments. I'll just leave it at that. This does expand it so the state can give money contractually to private providers to expand broadband. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not technical. I do not know how they're going to do that. I do not know if One Georgia Authority has the authority to do that. That is a legal question around the gratuitous clause that is not our main point here. Our point is that the rules have been in place for over 2 years. There's a stakeholder advisory committee made up of the private industry, the providers, the EMCs, local governments that have worked on this program since 2018. The rules were codified in 2019, and now there's funding for the program. Now there's changes. So we are concerned that this is going to delay the implementation of this first round of grant funding. The money's there. It's been approved. The governor signed the budget. It's ready to go. This is going to delay it. And I do not know how long it takes DCA to create new rules to implement these changes. And I do not know how long One Georgia might have to take to implement their new rules. So we do appreciate any effort to expand rural broadband. And we are in communication with the author in good faith. He has been communicating with us, but I don't know if we're going to ever get to a point where we think this bill is good. But y'all don't have to appease us, right? It's state funding. So y'all do what you think obviously you need to do, but we do have concerns.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the bill? Are there any providers here? They may want to come in and say something. Please introduce yourself.
Sure. Madam Chair, I'm John Bozeman. Wasn't expecting to give testimony today, so I apologize, recognizing that normally there's no testifying at the committee hearing, but I am here. Simply put, this was an effort that we worked with legislative council to tweak a law that's on the books now. There was concern that the way the law was written previously created a gratuities issue. If a private provider, such as a telephone company like an AT&T or a Comcast or a Charter, wanted to participate in the grant process, it was recommended to us that we change the situation so the state would issue contracts versus grants in the ability they can be a resource as the state identifies unserved areas to participate in. And that is the fundamental reason we're trying to advance this legislation. As local governments are trying to serve these unserved areas, we want to be, as the private sector, also in the position to help advance that cause. And that's and so we would ask, as we continue to work with our friends in other industries, as well as the counties, to address any issues, we're just trying to provide more resources to help for the deployment of broadband across the state of Georgia as public funds become available.
Representative Oliver.
Current law, can One Georgia Authority contract with AT&T to serve underserved areas in Georgia?
I will say the way it is done now is that funds are available to local governments to make these decisions. What we're trying to, yes, ma'am. What we're trying to do is let the state go through a contracting mechanism instead of just the grant provision as they're making decisions to serve unserved areas, so that a local government or a local community can have the best quality service providers available instead of trying to just figure out how to do it themselves.
So the counties are saying, I think she said, don't vote for this. Is the Georgia Municipal Association taking a position for or against this bill?
Ma'am, I'm not aware.
If this is, in fact, and I'm following Representative Fleming's change, if this is a change of law to allow a private provider to be the, for lack of a better term, the contractor to deliver the service directly,
An option. Yes, ma'am.
an option, then that is a change of law that affords you a profit opportunity and may extend service to an underserved. And does this bill limit it only to underserved area?
Yes, so that's one of the big things in this bill, and it's one of the languages we've gone through quite stringently, is it changes from a unserved area to an unserved location. So, and I'll use my hometown as an example, and obviously I've had to work very closely with them. You know, Oconee County, they funded a loop to go through Oconee County. Okay, but that is one particular project, and it is an option for the local governments to do that. They've done that. So we put in here so that any government like that has already entered in and is looking for this funding, it doesn't hurt them moving forward. The biggest point in saying an unserved location is, so say they have that loop and they want to add an arm to it, they can still go get funding for that. The point of this is they would potentially, if this were to be passed, be able to look at other providers to come in partnership, or the state could look at partnerships there where local governments aren't picking up the ball and going with it.
Does the grant, but can the grant go directly to AT&T?
That would be it would be a contract. I'm saying in the past.
The statute changes, so the state, one Georgia authority could contract directly with AT&T and is not exclusively required to contract with City of Blue Ridge.
As we're advised through Legislative Council, that is how we came up with that verbiage. Yes, ma'am.
And AT&T could get exclusive authority in that contract for that particular area that would then thereafter prohibit the city or Universe or whoever else who would want to.
They would be one
for that area.
Again, it would still have to make business sense for them to be able to do that. Correct. But I think that's one of the things that we're trying to encourage is to go into these unserved locations where municipalities aren't doing that and give them another opportunity to be able to do that.
Currently, the private sector does not have the ability to do the resource.
I understand that. And this changes the law to put the private sector competing with the county or the city, or
in my personal opinion,
that's what I'm
if I
trying to
may,
figure out.
I wouldn't say in that terms. I would say that right now, although I think we've made great strides towards it, I think that right now, the way it's written, our only hope is that a local government will pick up the ball and provide these services. I think there are areas that are not going to do that. They're not going to be able to do that funding wise. So this would give them an opportunity to be able to do that in a different manner.
Somehow AT&T thinks it can make a profit when the city can't, basically.
If they choose to, but I mean, again, they're not going to fund a project that's not going, I mean, that's just like a city's not going to fund it. They're not going to fund a project that can't actually return on the dollar.
Okay, I've had a request. Could you, in your introduction, where do you work? Who do you represent?
Yes, ma'am. I'm John Bozeman of Georgia Link Public Affairs Group representing Comcast.
Okay, thank you. And number 5, you have a question?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. So the two names I've heard mentioned several times during this conversation has been Department of Community Affairs, DCA, and One Georgia Fund. Have either one of them taken a position on this bill?
DCA has some concerns. We've sat with them. We've requested some feedback on that on multiple occasions and have not received that at this time.
What about One Georgia Fund?
One Georgia Fund has not contacted me in any way, shape, or form. And I'll add to that, Mr. Chairman, like I made my statement about herding cats. I mean, I have had multiple meetings about this, have encouraged any input in this whatsoever. I believe ACCG spoke to that. And again, I don't know that we ever have a perfect bill in the sense that it's going to make everybody happy, but I do believe that everybody at the table currently, all the names mentioned today have put a good faith effort into trying to present the best bill possible to get broadband across the state.
So if I may, Madam Chair, one of the questions that ACCG representative mentioned was that DCA would have to write new guidelines to administer these new potential state contracts. And the concern was that that would delay the funding that's already in the pipeline for people that are going to serve the rural area, unserved areas. What is your response?
If you will look, my response to that is if you'll look at line 135. That's why, specifically why we added the language on or after July 1. So it would not delay anything that has been funded at this point. Part of that was we didn't want to change the rules on anybody in the middle of the game. If they've already reached an agreement and they've already received funding, those projects continue to be funded and continue to move forward. We do not, I mean, obviously in no way, shape, or form are we looking to slow this down. This is an effort to get it to them quicker.
Can you, you mentioned having reached out to DCA and they had some issues with this. Do you know what the issues are?
They brought up the gratuity clause as well. We advised them that, again, that's what this is, the verbiage that is in here is how Ledge Council has advised us is the legal way to do that. I was awaiting some comments on that from them last week sometime and did not receive any written correspondence. So
thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Shannon, on a Zoom call, you have some questions?
Yeah, just one question. Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Wiedauer, just to follow up on your example, just a quick question. So what you said about in your area, if there's an area that's not being served and then AT&T reaches out and starts to service that area, is there anything in your bill that would prevent the county from later on getting involved if they wanted to add more carriers down the road, like starting to service that area after AT&T has already done it? I mean, not immediately, but just, if they wanted to eventually get involved to do it.
This provides for any unserved location to be served and be funded in that manner. Again, I think that's why we went with the language of unserved location and very carefully chose those words, because I think you can very easily broaden that area so to the point where you can't get additional funding to get to an unserved location.
So just again, I'm not saying anything for or against your bill. I'm just trying to clarify. So does that mean that if AT&T gets involved to service the area, then the county can't later on try to work on that area that's not being serviced and maybe add more competition? Or is there anything in your bill about that?
Right. Yeah, they can get into that in a grant manner. This is a contract with the private provider, but yes, if it is a served location, if they wanted to serve the same location that was already served, and just let me think through that for a second, they couldn't do it with funding from the state. They couldn't get a grant or from the state or federal for that matter. But they certainly could get into that and serve that area if they so choose.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's what I was asking. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'd like to add just a couple things. I see Representative Oliver a little confused. Part of the purpose to do this as well is to make sure that our funding from the federal and the state level goes as far as possible. And so once the state makes a decision to select a provider, whether it's a local government, an EMC, a cable company, or a telecom company, the purpose of this is also to make sure that those funds are, those grants are being used on that project. Now, nothing stops another organization from coming in and competing, putting another, some more infrastructure in place for this project on their own dime. But the purpose is that, to serve only unserved areas. So we are hoping that this does not create an opportunity. Part of this bill is going to make sure that public dollars do not go in to continue to fund areas that have already been spoken for. We want to make sure those funds are only used in unserved areas. But nothing stops a private entity or a public entity from going in these areas, but we're not trying to divide up that grant fund. The grant fund is only for unserved areas. So if you want to come into a served area, there's nothing that stops you, but this stops public funds from going unserved to served areas. It's focused on unserved areas.
Representative Roberts, you have a question?
Yes, I think the woman from ACCG mentioned that she's concerned about the delay of people that are already in the hopper. I guess what I'm trying to understand is, are there a lot of people that have been waiting for this grant program and they're ready to take some of these unserved areas? Or for sure that the people who are in the hopper now aren't going to address this for us? It feels like, did that make sense?
It did. And I think you're asking kind of a quantity of people. Is there a backlog? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I mean, if there's a bunch of people waiting to use these grants to do exactly what you're asking to do.
Sure. And should that be the case, and I can't give you an exact number of how many projects are in the hopper, but again, that's why we very specifically added the verbiage on 135 to only be projects moving forward. So up into any project in the books between now and July 1st, should this go into effect, they would stay by the same set of rules, the same DCA writings. It's not going to slow any of their projects down. Anybody that would submit for an application for this process after July 1 would be doing it with a new set of rules that they would understand at that time. So it doesn't slow down any project. It wouldn't impact any project that is currently on the books.
So at this point, with the funding just coming in, we really haven't been able to see how well this program is going to work before we're looking to expand it to private companies. Is that okay? But I get that you,
not been awarded. I mean,
right.
A lot of federal, we have state funding coming in. It's only been limited. That's why the date provision. So it doesn't slow the process down for anyone that's already eligible to receive the grant. This only deals essentially with grants that will be moving forward. Quite frankly, the grants have not been there like we expect them to come here, and that's part of the reason we bring this forward. Is not so it goes to private sector, but if a unserved community wants the option of the private sector to utilize this grant funding, it's not off the table.
You might be willing to go into an underserved area more than somebody that's already approved under this program. Is that?
It would not compete against someone already approved. This is
okay.
Go
all right.
This will allow us to only go and receive a grant in unserved
areas. And that goes back to stretching the dollars. We don't want people to continue to double dip. Say you got a really eager local municipality and they're just banging out the grants and they're getting every inch of their county taken care of, kind of thing. We want to encourage the growth across the state. So we don't want projects that were already funded by state or federal funds to be able to go and get additional state and federal funds for the very same project that they've already gotten approved.
I got you.
Okay, thank you. Representative Oliver?
Does this only apply to the One Georgia money that currently is appropriated, or does it apply also to what we anticipate to be a very large amount of money on the federal stimulus for broadband expansion?
This would allow them to get into either federal or state funding, whatever would be appropriate.
So there's an unknown amount of money that's coming for the 20% of Georgia. Do we think 20% of Georgia would be defined as unserved? Not little served, but unserved.
I would struggle to come up with a percentage for that.
Your definition says unserved.
And that is the purpose for the public funding to go to unserved areas with no one's already serving.
Can't hear.
Any further questions?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Go right ahead. There you go. Sorry. Go right ahead.
Sure.
Yes.
Mayor Francis, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. So we're talking about, right now, we're talking about $30 million is my understanding. Is that correct?
Plus any federal funds that might be available. Yes.
Well, yes, but what the governor has put in is 30 million in One Georgia Authority. Doesn't One Georgia Authority, aren't One Georgia Authority funds restricted to rural areas of the state? It's my understanding that it's, but I think One Georgia Authority funds are restricted to rural areas of the state. That funding is not meant.
And actually, I was just given the information, 157 counties in the state would be available for those fundings.
Okay, would be available for this money, even though it goes through One Georgia Authority?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, my thought is this is an awful lot of money to be talking about going to private providers without even hearing from DCA. I just would like to hear from them.
As would I. We did reach out, and then again, they shared the concerns of the gratuity clause, as well as the concerns, as some of have been mentioned today, the concern of slowing anything down. But I've not gotten anything tangible to be able to include in this bill to attempt to satisfy any of those concerns. And again, it doesn't mandate that this goes to private. This is merely expanding the toolbox if a local government or the state wants to partner with a private provider to be able to get broadband to those areas.
And whoever gets this money will have public funds paying for them putting in infrastructure.
Whether that's a local government or correct. If they are approved for that, there will be an application process just like anything else, and certainly have the opportunity to turn down that option.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. The chair has a question. I come from a community that 25 years ago put in our own internet and cable system, and they branched it out and serve other communities. They took it from Thomasville to Cairo to Camilla and to Moultrie. They each are independent cities. They have, I guess you kind of merged them together so it is an entity of its own. Now, if they decide they want to take that to Ocklackney, they would be able to apply and get those funds and be able to do it. Or if they wanted to partner with the EMC out of Cairo and say, okay, now we're going to take it to Climax. This is what that money is for. This is what I'm asking.
That's exactly correct.
All right. Thank you. All right. Is there any more discussion? Any more questions? Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So does the bill limit people from getting multiple grants if you get a grant from the state?
For a project that serves a specific location. So again, and I hate to keep harping on that, but the terminology of specific location. So just as the chairman just explained, if you have a project that's been funded through the state of these grants, and you add to that project in any way, shape, or form to add to get service to additional unserved locations, they can get additional funds added to that project. It essentially becomes a secondary additional project to the original one that had grants.
But you can't pour new money into something you've already received old money or public money for.
So if I have a project that I've received a grant to bring service to your house, I cannot go back and get additional funds to get money to your house again.
Why not?
The intent of this is to spread out these funds to get to areas that have not had that opportunity yet. So if I've already entered into an agreement that I'm going to put up my funds, we've got some additional grant funding, and we're coming to your house. And if I've made a bad decision in that, or I've underpriced it, or I need to go back into the kitty, unfortunately, you've made that agreement, and you've said what you're going to do, and we want you to honor that agreement to get service to your house. And we want the next person that has not had that opportunity to have that same opportunity was afforded you.
So the purpose of the bill is twofold: to make the state grants available to companies outside of local governments to do the work, number one, correct?
Yes, sir.
And number two is to put in a new provision that is not currently in the law that says once you get state money, you can't get money from another granting source, whether it be the federal government or some private entity, I guess.
If you're trying to serve the same thing you've gotten money for to already serve. So you've already gotten that funding to serve a location.
Right.
We want that money to do that. And we would like the additional money that you might be requesting to go to a different location so that all Georgians can have an opportunity to have quality broadband.
To avoid a double dip, we've already made a commitment and received funds to serve. Right.
So why would One Georgia or DCA give money to someone who already made a commitment and allow someone to double dip?
Currently, they would be allowed to. I can't answer that.
Why wouldn't they allow that? You're attempting to prohibit it. My question to begin with is, why do you need the prohibition? Why do you assume that they would do that?
I mean, we just
no. That's not my question.
I understand your question, sir.
Okay.
So I can't answer whether or not they would. What we're trying to do is just encouraging the spreading of it and to make sure. And quite frankly, I had a very conversation with my local chairman. He was looking to go get additional grants for a project that we have already gotten approved.
Right.
So I think there's some concern there on, a local municipality being able to come and get additional funds I can't speak to what DCA's actions in that request would be, but we are just trying to put into statute that the ability or the encouragement of not double funding something.
So usually when we prohibit something, it's because there's a problem exists. Is there a problem that exists?
Representative, if I may, there's a lot of federal and state funding
Right.
now available that has not been before.
Makes sense.
When you passed the bill a couple of years ago, setting the parameters, a lot of that really wasn't being contemplated.
Okay.
So there's two things that did not get included in the bill that you all passed, I think was 402 from a couple of years ago. One was the ability for the option for the state to use a private provider that does this everywhere that they can now, right? This would allow them to participate if they won the competing contract to serve an area, okay?
So there was not a provision for private corporation?
That because there was a gratuities issue where
Right.
the state did not believe they could send a grant directly to a private organization.
Correct.
Legislative Council, amongst discussions, said you could do it through a contracting
Sure.
purpose. That's why the contracting piece is in from One Georgia, to give them the ability to contract so
That
that
makes
a
sense.
private sector can be in the mix.
That makes sense.
The other piece of this is while there's additional monies that should be available from the federal and state level, we know this is an expensive proposition,
Right.
whoever's providing the service. If someone has already been paid to provide this service, applying for money to go additional dollars, whether it's state or federal dollars, that they've already been paid for, does not expand broadband in Georgia to unserved areas.
Well, does the grant cover 100% of the cost to start with? Is it a matching grant?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think each application would be unique. But the other part of this is, and kind of back to your question too, is with federal and state funding, we're trying to ensure that if they've gotten federal funding, that the state doesn't also pay that same entity for something they've already been paid to do from the federal level.
Well, that would mean One Georgia grant would, or DCA would grant somebody money who had already been given money to someone who had already been given money from the federal government, right?
If they're aware of that, yes.
And you're trying to prevent that.
Correct.
So you don't have complete confidence that DC or One Georgia would let that happen to start with, basically.
Fair enough.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, Representative Wiedauer, just a question, less to the content and more to the context of the bill here. Lines 133 through 135 say, in no instance shall any state funds be used to support a project that will provide broadband services to any locations where broadband services are already available from a broadband services provider. My question would be more a definition of available. And the reason I say that is part of what this bill does is it changes the designation from unserved areas to unserved locations, which in the definition of locations in here can be individual homes, businesses, buildings, that sort of thing. There are situations, and I live in an area where grants were used to put infrastructure in place. If you were fortunate enough to know about that in a period of time and sign up for it, you could get a lot of very nice installation work and expensive installation work done at no cost. But there have been houses and properties that have moved in since then that the service may have been cost prohibitive for both the provider and the consumer. How would this bill address those kind of situations?
I mean, it would certainly allow for the opportunity to go in and do that. Now, is somebody going to go through and just for your situation, if there's a house, again, we try to expand this definition because if you think about a house in rural Georgia, it might be different than a house in Oconee County where you're maybe a half mile apart or 2 miles apart. So it's very unlikely somebody's going to look for a grant fund to come off of one line for one house. It's possible they would, but this would allow for that opportunity. I mean, again, we're trying to spread out the federal and state money to as many areas of the state as we possibly can and encourage the expansion of broadband to the best of our abilities.
And the area and location is part of our conversation with other partners. The area and location dialogue was a change through the process to make sure that, and that was a conversation we had with other interested parties as we're negotiating through the bill to make sure that an a certain location within an area, just because it's being served in the area doesn't prohibit the funding, right? So if you have a location within an area that isn't served, we didn't want to prohibit the ability for that to be served.
Okay, so I guess that, that kind of circles back to the question of the definition of already available. Broadband service is not regulated like power is, that sort of thing. Broadband service providers do not have designated territories where they're required to provide service. But if you have a line on the pole or in the ground next to a piece of property, does that make it already serviced or not?
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, it's 100% based off speed too. So we're trying to get quality broadband, the 25/3 service to all locations. And if it's anything less than that, then it would open the door for them to be able to come get this funding as well.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any further questions. Okay, Representative Oliver.
I don't have a question, Madam Chair, but I am very nervous about the status of my confusion over this. And I really, if there's any possibility, I really would like to hear from DCA on this. I don't know what the chairman's pleasure is, but I'm definitely confused.
Okay, what I would like to do is hold this bill. If you would get us somebody from DCA, grab them, get a hold of them, go to the director. We want somebody in here. And if we don't, then we're going to meet later this week. We will move it forward without them if they don't show up.
Fair enough.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, thank you. See if you can get a hold of them. If they don't, ask them to call me.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Okay, next we have Representative Oliver, House Bill 579.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be very brief. This bill is relates to the creation of an authority option for all 159 counties and other entities in 2003. It's a general bill, but the history specifically is about DeKalb County. DeKalb County did take advantage of the 2003 bill that created a public safety and judicial authority and expanded what was then 30-year-old jails and courthouses that was very needed in a mature county like DeKalb, a large mature county. In 2007, based on an internal dispute, a referendum was required to be applied to the authority funding for entities, and that really stopped the progress of usage. And DeKalb County has asked me to come forward and really on behalf of the other 158 counties to remove the referendum requirement that was imposed only for DeKalb County in 2007. It does give other counties the opportunity, if it wishes, to use this for funding for courts and jail facilities. But DeKalb County does have a specific need and a specific plan. And I ask for your favorable consideration. Happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions for the representative? Anyone online? Yes, what's your number? Okay.
No, I'm sorry, 9.
9. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Madam Chairman, I'm just curious, is there any other public safety and judicial facilities authority besides the one in your?
Not yet, sir. And
Okay.
your county may be interested if the referendum is required. There's no referendum for a hospital authority or a water authority.
Right, yes, ma'am. I agree. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? What's the pleasure? Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you,
Chairman.
Madam Chair. I just want to say that Representative Oliver Chairwoman Oliver had some bond bills earlier that I had more concerns about, but I've done my best to try to figure out this one, and I don't see a problem with it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, comments? Okay, what's the pleasure of the committee? Do I second? All those in favor or any other questions, follow up? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Your measure passed. You're
Thank
on
you.
to rules.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we have one more bill, House Bill 222. We're over our time a little bit, but if you'd come forward.
Madam Chair, thank you and the committee for allowing me to come today. I have House Bill 222. This bill in just a simple phrase would eliminate the charter for the town of Pendergrass, Georgia, which is in Jackson County. It is in House District 31, which I represent. And the reason I introduced the bill to abolish Pendergrass was I received quite a few phone calls from people in and outside of the city of Pendergrass complaining about the way the city was being run. The mayor is a long line of his family that has been mayor of the city. He owns a large portion of the land inside the city limits and some adjoining the city. He's used his position to rezone, annex, and his property for development. Has used his position to pack the council with relatives, employees, renters to get zoning and annexations passed. He is also in business with the city administrator, Rob Russell. I went and found the latest audit that I could find for the city of Pendergrass. It's 2018. And so the numbers that I'm giving you are nearly 3 years old, but some things that really concern me about the town of Pendergrass, they have a legal judgment against them as soon as the Georgia Supreme Court finishes of $1,222,000. They have notes payable of $626,000, which makes their liabilities almost $2 million for a town that in 2010 had about 500 people in it, and it's maybe 1,000 more now since a lot of the development has happened. They have capital assets of about 400,000, which is going, and outlay projects at 125,000, which leaves them with having to pay off $1,216,000 if they can sell their assets. I went through the audit. The things that I found that bother me are as their expenditures are in excess of their appropriations. They typically under budget and just pay bills when they come in. They don't amend their budget. Their banking accounts are over the FDIC limit. As I mentioned a while ago, they do have notes payable and legal fees. Legal fees for the judgment against them were right now in 2018 were $311,000. Their interfund receivables and payables, they have over $18,000 that's due their SPLOST account from the general fund. We do not know what that money was used for. They are not a member of the regional commission, or they were not in 2018. I don't know what it is now. And that is required by law. I don't know whether they are a member of GMA right now. Their internal financial reports are not generated for fiscal activity. Their financial statements are not available for more than 12 months. Bank reconciliations are not balanced. As I mentioned, general fund owes a SPLOST fund, which is not kept in a separate account. At that time, they had no plan to reimburse the SPLOST. Their approved budget was not balanced by fund and expenditures and excessive appropriations. That is not in compliance with state law. Expenditures approved and paid without consideration of budget limits. And they use the excess funds to pay attorney fees without amending their budget. Now, we had several people that from the Pendergrass area that came in and spoke to you a couple of weeks ago. Their testimony is on tape, but this seems to have been a problem for a long time in Pendergrass. This is not a 1 year or even a 5 year thing. This goes back over a decade, or at least, of things that are going on in Pendergrass, and the other cities and towns in Jackson County know this, but they say, oh, it's just Pendergrass. Well, it's not just Pendergrass, and there are things that need to be done. And I've spoken to GMA a couple of times about this and asked them what could we do. And they really don't have any particular guidelines. Now, I've never been in city government, never been a mayor, never been a city council, but and some of you have. I would love to hear, if you have any suggestions that could be done to take care of this, because it's not going to change until the administration changes, and that is the mayor and the city administrator and the council, because they're all aligned with each other. And so, and I've talked with citizens of Pendergrass, and a lot of them just plain don't care. They've just moved in. They don't care. They their thing is that it's close to the interstate and they can get on the interstate and go. But what they don't realize is that when this judgment comes down and Pendergrass can't pay it, their taxes are going to go up to pay this judgment. And the people that are most responsible are either trying to sell property to get out of paying it, or don't live in Pendergrass and won't have to pay anything on it. So I will leave it at that. I realize that this is a pretty drastic step, but if you go in and you do legislation to abolish to remove the mayor and city, you have to have a vote. And when we do that, they're just going to come back and run again, and it'll just become a revolving door. A revolving door. So I'm open to any questions that the committee might have. The bill does show that we wrote the bill, and then I took it to the Jackson County government, and I said, now I'm going to introduce this. I'm not looking to harm you in any way. What do you need in this bill? And so they made several suggestions on things that if this happened, what they could do and what they couldn't do. And so you'll see in the bill that that they will set up a special service district that was formerly Pendergrass if they pay off the note that is owed by Pendergrass to the plaintiffs of the whistleblower. And there are several other things through the bill that pertain to what the county will do and the services they will offer to the citizens of Pendergrass. And so I'll open that. I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have them, and certainly appreciate your consideration on this bill.
Thank you. We do have a question, Representative Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question for the sponsor. Have you made any changes to this bill since subcommittee? And the reason I ask is because I'm not challenging the veracity of what's being said about Pendergrass. I don't have any information on that, although I have gotten some emails with some people who seem to disagree about how they feel that things are going well or not going well in the city of Pendergrass. But just as I stated in subcommittee, if you have to have a referendum of the people to incorporate an area, I do think you should have to have a referendum to abolish the city. So I just want to know if you made any changes around that, and if not, then I'm still a no on the bill.
There is precedent in abolishing the city without. I think that was a city in either Henry or Rockdale County that they were done away with. They had basically the same setup as this one.
But your bill still doesn't have a referendum. Is that what you're saying?
No, it does not. It's the same bill that was presented to the subcommittee.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Could I ask the committee a question? I mean, can I?
Sure.
Chairman Fleming, you city lawyer, can you give me some suggestions that could be done to solve this problem without abolishing the town? I've looked at everything, and I've had legislative council go through all the things that might be done or could be done and everything heads right back to what we've already got. And
the legislature grants charters for areas to be incorporated. We don't require people to be in a town. We require them to live in a county. Obviously, everything has to be in a county in Georgia, but cities are optional. And the legislature giveth, the legislature taketh away. And if you have all these problems that you've talked about and they apparently are not cooperative with their state representative, it's your job to come down and tell us how to fix your local problem. And if you say that this is the trouble you're having, unless I hear other testimony that's different, I'm voting with you.
Well, the things that I've mentioned are in black and white. Now, the mayor's here and I don't know who else from the town is here, but the emails that I've gotten have all said, we love our small town. We especially like the police department, but I don't think there's but 2 or 3 members of the police department. And other people that had written me, when I looked up to see who they were either members of the town council or were in business with people affiliated with the mayor. And so it's a lot of hometown, and hometown is great until you start getting to the point that you're using your position to benefit yourself. I've been a representative 16 years. I've never introduced any type of local legislation until this one that the city didn't want. And so this is where we are right here.
Thank you. As you know, we don't normally take testimony. We've had some exceptions today, and we have some people that do want to speak. But I have to tell you, we have 5 more minutes, and we have to vacate this room. So I've got a few people that want to speak. If you want to come up here, you get a minute, and let us know what your thoughts are. Let's see. Is there a Mr. Robinson? Okay. Okay, that's fine. Please come up.
And also, this is, I believe, a resident of Pendergrass on the screen.
Okay.
I think we have a couple on Zoom who wanted to say something.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
If you would use the mic. Thank you. And I'm sorry, but we have just run out of time today. So
Okay.
if you'll be brief.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. There's no reason for this whatsoever. Tommy, when I was standing outside, Tommy came up and said, "Hey, Monk." Monk is a nickname for me. And that's the first time I've talked to Tommy in probably the last 10, 15 years. He has never been in Pendergrass asking about anything about Pendergrass or where we stand or anything else. Because if we had been approached about problems that we had, we would certainly have addressed those problems. And we realize that we do have a suit pending against us, but we're making plans to pay that money. We have already accumulated money to go to that if we lose. But I am confident that we're not going to lose. And if we do not lose, then we do not owe the debt. But we are making we are going to Plan B and making our plans to be able to handle this debt. We are a growing town. We now probably have 25 to 3,000 people there. We have 2 or 3 subdivisions that are being developed. So I would say in the next 2 years, we will have a town of close to 5,000 people. So with 5,000 people, there's enough tax and all to pay your bills. We have not had a problem paying our bills. We pay our bills regularly, and we're proud of that fact.
Do you have any audits that you've had where the cities get audited annually, or do you have any reports of things like that?
I did not bring anything with me, and usually I rely on my city administrator to take care of that because he is a lawyer, and so I allow him to take care of that. But we do have CPAs that do our books, and so we're very careful with where
How
our
many
money
total
goes.
employees do you have?
Total employees?
Yes, in
Let's
all
see.
departments.
We have 1, 2, 3, 4.
Do you know the amount?
We have about 8 or 9 employees there now. Is that right?
Well, yeah, we do have 5 on the police department, 2 full-time and some part-time on the streets department. A clerk, we have a finance director, a contracted building inspector, the city administrator. So that's
Okay.
about how many we have. In our last audit, the
The 2019 audit is not finished because when COVID hit, it just slowed things down. We were told that it would take about 30 days to get the 2019 audit finished. And they're working on 2020 also.
Thank you. Okay. Was there another question? Did you, Chairman, you have a question? Please go right ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I see where the ad run by Representative Benton was done in January, in the
Yes,
paper. So my assumption is you've known for about a month he intended to introduce this.
No, no one ever contacted us. The only way we knew that was, a bill was out there was that our city lawyer picked it up in the local newspaper.
When?
It was about less than a week from when the first session was.
Okay, so for over a month, you've known about this. Have you reached out to him and talked to him about your issues?
No, at one time we had a meeting. He called me and he said he was not going to meet with me and turned it down.
The reason I did not meet with him is because they put it out to the city and was going to make it into more than just a 2 or 3 person meeting. It was going to become a town hall for the meeting that he and I and Mr. Russell were going to have.
Well,
That's all it was supposed to be.
all they had to say was, I only want you and Mr. Russell in the meeting, and that's all it would be there. But we were not, no guidelines were put out as to how the meeting would go, so.
It was
Well,
an
my
attempt
su-
to-
you
it was
miss-
an attempt to intimidate me if I'd gone there and all those people had been there.
Mr. Mayor, it's your choice. You're the mayor. You can do what you want to do. But my suggestion to you would be that I've been here a long time and I've never seen a representative get to the point where he needed to take away the charter of a city because they had so many problems. My suggestion was you reach out to Representative Benton and in whatever form or fashion he may want to talk to you if you want to do something to help your city.
Okay, well, I don't know where all these problems are that he's bringing forth, but we would certainly like to clear them up if they are there. But
It may begin with having a conversation with him on whatever level or time or place he wants to.
we can handle that, certainly. We have
You've
no
had a month,
objection. We
you've
have
had a
no
month, you've had a
objection.
month and you hadn't got it done.
Well, when he told us he was not interested, I mean, he canceled the other meeting on us. We assumed that he was not interested in talking to us.
That was a bad assumption
It was,
on your part.
yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a Zoom. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. If you would go ahead. Dwight, is that your name? Is it working? Do you have to turn it?
Mr. Chairman, are you talking to me?
Yes. Please go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for letting me share. I just want you to know that I live at 140 Railroad Street in Pendergrass. I'm new to the city. We've been there since October. And I just want you to know we love the city. We sought it out. We bought 2 acres of land and raising 2 boys there. My wife of 24 years. So I just wanted you to hear from another side is we love the city and we don't want to lose our services, meaning we don't want to lose the police department. I love having them within walking distance of my property. We love the trash service, the playground, the library. Just want you to know we don't want to lose our city services. We really appreciate the city of Pendergrass. It's a beautiful city. They're making all kinds of improvements and we really love living there. Me and my wife, we walk the community. I just want this to be on record. We've got 2 young boys. We're in the community almost every night, and I've yet to meet one person that wants the city to be done away with. So I just want to be on record. I don't know who gave testimony before, but I've not yet to meet a person in Pendergrass that wants it to be done away with. So thank you for letting me share, and we hope that you don't go forward with it.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. All right. We have a couple other people, and again, we're going to have to go very quickly. Let's see, Renee. Okay.
I'm the city clerk at Pendergrass, and I'm also a resident.
What mic are you at?
I'm sorry.
What mic?
8.
Okay, and where's 8? Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I am the city clerk of Pendergrass, but I'm also a resident. I've lived in Pendergrass for about 11 years. And there were a few things that I'd like to clear up. Our audit is, we're waiting on it. The SPOS dollars have been paid back. And this was stuff that happened probably 10 or so years ago. There was a bump in the road, but Pendergrass is a different place now. The council's new. We have an election this year. We have 2 council members, and in 2023, it will be the mayor and 2 council seats up for election. And I haven't either. I haven't talked to anyone who wants the city to go. The mayor's ran unopposed for many years. We have one of our council members here today, Harlan Robinson. And that was my understanding too, that Mr. Benton had canceled the meeting. But, you know, no one's called the city hall to ask any questions about this, to clarify anything, or I haven't heard from Mr. Benton. So, I mean, the city hall's open, it's there. We do have records. It's transparent. They're there for you to request. But we haven't heard from anyone. We do have a good town, and we have events for the citizens. We have, we have the library. We have library summer programs. Everybody enjoys that. I'd hate to lose the town too. I don't want to lose the police department patrolling the neighborhoods. The streets department does a terrific job. I'd hate to see that. You know, the county could take over, but you know, they care for it in Pendergrass really well, and I'd hate to lose that. But you know, we have another citizen, I think, who would like to speak today on Zoom, if she's logged in still.
And
Meredith,
who is that?
Meredith Davison. Is she there? I'd like to give her a
Go
chance
right
to
ahead,
speak.
Meredith.
Also.
There.
We would like a chance to, oh, there she is.
Here I am. Hi, thanks for the opportunity to speak. My name is Meredith Davison, and I've been a resident in the city for 15 years. I live on Blackberry Lane with my husband and my 3 sons. And I lived in Pendergrass during the time that Representative Benton is speaking of. And Pendergrass today is not the Pendergrass then. And I spoke with Representative Benton in 2009, and we discussed pulling the charter back then during those times when, yes, the city was ran by one family. It was the mayor's mother-in-law who was running the show around here. And yes, she was putting her renters on the city council, but that is not the case today. And why didn't Mr. Benton do this back then? I mean, that's a legitimate question, but sitting here today in 2021, I'm glad that he didn't, because things are different today. The city is a different place today. Our mayor has cleaned up the city. His mother-in-law passed away, and he inherited a lot of land and a lot of rental properties. And those properties were dilapidated old houses that attracted crime, drugs, sex offenders, unfortunately. And he tore those down and replaced them with beautiful homes. And those beautiful homes attracted beautiful families. And that has breathed life into our community. And Mr. Benton, I'm sorry, but I don't think you have taken the time to come into our community and drive around and look at our community. I invited you myself to take you around and show you the difference of our community today versus 2009, because it is a night and day difference. But you didn't accept my invitation. Why? I don't know. But as for the committee, I really hope that you will listen to what I'm saying, because I love our city. My family loves our city. We have chosen to stay here and raise our 3 sons when we could have left. Our home values have gone up. We have chosen to stay here and build a business in the city. And if we lose our charter, we lose our police department. We lose our streets department.
Thank you. I really hate to cut you off, but we are on a very close.
I understand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I believe, Chairman, you have something to say?
My question for the clerk was going to be the same. Did she reach out to Representative Benton when she knew he introduced this bill?
When I learned that he introduced it, did I reach out to him?
Yes.
No, I did not.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we have some problems in this community. Right now, we are in a time crunch, and I'm sorry, there's not enough time for everybody here to speak. I will tell you, when we had a hearing, we had people that had another opinion in the subcommittee. I think this community has a lot of problems. I'm going to, 1 minute, that's all we've got. If you want to say something, 1 minute.
The 2 people that talked during the subcommittee were not Pendergrass residents. One of them owns a piece of property outside the city, and his problem with the city is he don't like the socioeconomic, that group that's coming into the city, the workers, the blue collar workers. He don't want that. He wants $500,000 houses put on his property in the future. So he's fighting that.
Okay,
That's
thank
those
you.
people. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm just commenting, and I'm trying to help you people out. I'm going to keep this bill alive. And I think what you need to do is you need to get together. This bill is alive for 2 years. You've got this year and next year. This is not a good thing for any community to be living through. And the people of your area deserve better than this. I can only imagine, in speaking myself, it's not my business, but 10 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever it was, there were a lot of problems there. Hopefully you've cleaned them up, but Representative Benton, I think you need to not have an overwhelming giant meeting. I think you need to get together with the management of the city, get your records and prove what you say you have done, and we will keep this bill alive. I don't see any other business, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.